Hello, my friends. Some words of Torah for Parshas Korach. Have you ever pondered the question, if I were to disappear off the face of the earth right now, at this moment, what lasting remnant of me would there be after I'm gone? What legacies have I created? What permanent mark have I made on this world? To be sure, there's an element of egotism driving this question, but at the same time, was I not created by God and brought into this world for a unique purpose? Doesn't this question legitimately express my faith that I was brought here by God to accomplish something meaningful with my life? Don't be embarrassed if you find yourself asking this question, since Moshe Rabbeinu himself also asked it. The Medrash records that at one point in his life, Moshe turned to Hashem and said, Ribono shel olam, misha ani meit ein ani nizkar. Master of the universe, when I die, I won't be remembered by anyone. If even Moshe could be concerned about his legacy, then I think it's okay for us to be concerned about ours. Now, we'll get to Hashem's response to Moshe's concern momentarily. But with this said, we can't really fault Korach for wanting to create a legacy of his own. He probably saw himself as a potential leader based on his Levite pedigree and his great wealth, which we are taught in the Medrash, Korach gained from finding Yosef's buried treasures before leaving Egypt. Perhaps he genuinely felt that he was destined for true leadership, and his intentions were therefore nobly directed to making a lasting contribution and realize his purpose in life. If so, where did he go wrong? There's another medrash that contrasts Moshe with Korach based on a verse from Mishlei, which says, Nivchar Shem Me'osher Rav. A name is better than great wealth. The medrash states that Moshe's name proved to be greater than Korach's wealth. I believe that the medrash is alluding to a deeper personality contrast between Moshe and Korach. Korach felt that he was destined for greatness because he possessed the gift of great pedigree and wealth. Moshe felt that his greatness did not emanate from any extrinsic endowments, but rather because he was endowed intrinsically with a good name, that is, a pure heart and a virtuous soul. Both wealth and virtue of character are truly gifts from heaven, but one is an add-on to the individual and the other is innate. What's the difference? When my value as a human being stems from what I have and not from what I am, I may subconsciously feel insecure about my worth, about my value, because everything that I am can just as easily be taken away from me as it was given to me. This insecurity that I may one day be stripped of my greatness may impel me to use my power to lower others in an effort to maintain my position of power. By contrast, if I see my intrinsic value, not based on what I have, but rather what I am, my worldview is not the desire to lower others, but rather a desire to use my power to help others realize their own intrinsic value. Korach's insecurity impelled him to attempt to topple Moshe and Aaron. True, he argued that Kichol Ha'ida Kulam Kedoshim, the entire congregation is holy. But instead of taking that argument to find ways to elevate the nation, his next words were instead, Umadua titnasu al kahal Hashem. Why are you lording over the community of Hashem? His wealth-driven greatness caused him to desire to lower Moshe and Aharon instead of raising up the people. By contrast, let's examine how the Medrash records Hashem's response to Moshe's concern that he would not be remembered after he died. God says to him in the Medrash, Moshe, I swear that just as you are lifting up each individual Jew when counting them with their half-shekel donations, so will all future generations feel lifted up by you when reading this portion from the Torah, from Parsha Truma, on an annual basis. The Medrash is implying that Moshe viewed his lasting legacy as that of elevating each and every one of his disciples, the Jewish people. He felt that he hadn't sufficiently accomplished that task because so many of his flock still had not realized their innate value. Hashem promised him, as long as a Jew searches the Torah that was given by you, Moshe, he or she will be able to discover their true worth by noting how esteemed each Jew is in Moshe's eyes. Because Moshe devoted his life to lifting up others, His legacy in the Torah lasts for all eternity. This is the difference between a Moshe and a Korach. You can either preserve your importance by lowering others, or you can help raise others and in the process realize your true value and purpose. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs Zatzal was fond of recalling his admiration of the Lubavitcher Rebbe for exactly this trait. And he wrote that years later, after his first meeting with the Rebbe, looking back on that encounter, I summed it up by saying that good leaders create followers. Great leaders create leaders. That was the Rebbe's greatness. Not only did he lead, he was a source of leadership in others. The corollary of this may be found in the respective fates of Korach and Moshe. Korach, in trying to suppress greatness, was himself swallowed by the earth. Once the earth lowered Korach into its belly, it closed its chasm, and there was no remnant of him left on the earth. Moshe, by contrast, was elevated before his death up to Mount Nevo, and his legacy still shines for every Jew in every generation. My attention was focused on being swallowed up and utterly forgotten this week in reading about the tragedy in Canada of 215 children's bodies which were discovered underneath the Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia, which operated from 1890 until 1969. The term residential schools refers to institutions that operated in Canada until the late 20th century, where First Nations or Indigenous children were taken from their families and their cultures in an effort to indoctrinate them with Western values and Christian faith. It is estimated that over 4,000 children died as a result of malnutrition and abuse in these schools. As one article from the CBC writes, from the 19th century until the last school closed in 1996, more than 150,000 First Nations children were required to attend state-funded Christian schools as part of a program to assimilate them into Canadian society. They were forced to convert to Christianity and not allowed to speak Indigenous languages. These children were swallowed by the ground. Their bodies were lost for decades. The attempt was made to make them utterly disappear, to hide the shameful genocide of innocent children, whose only crime was that they came from a different culture. But such crimes cannot remain hidden. The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the soil was God's reprimand against Cain for murder and causing the cancellation of another human being. The Kabbalists note that Korach was swallowed by the very same ground because he repeated Cain's effort to squash and destroy his rival. This is a badge of shame that Canadians must bear. It was born by an effort to suppress and homogenize, to lower the individuality and innateness of others and force them to conform to what was deemed right by the leaders of the time. When we try to pressure others to conform, when we seek to control others and not allow their individual strengths to emerge, we are repeating the errors of Korach. We need to atone as a country for the sins of the past, which are now only beginning to emerge. Part of that penance will be to raise up others who are different from us instead of lowering them into the ground. Each of us should ponder the question, for what will I be remembered when I die? Will it be for helping and leading others by lowering them, or by leading and helping others by raising them? May we always be disciples of Moshe and not the disciples of Korach. May we help others realize their own greatness so that we realize redemption together. May we see it, my friends, b'mehera b'yameinu. Amen. And here's wishing you a beautiful Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom. May it be a week filled with tremendous goodness.